Okay, so this is the beginning of a very, very, very deep dive into Giannis. Bear with me. This I could get long-winded here. I have a lot of thoughts. I've had time to digest a lot of Giannis film over the last couple of weeks, and I've started to kind of contextualize his existence up until now, right? His story from 2014 till 2026, and the differences between what kids thought should be done with him to Bud and the championship year, um, all the way to Griffin and his short-lived existence there, to where Doc kind of used him in different ways. Actually, I think Doc started using him kind of like Kid and ended up using him kind of like Bud. And I will give you the details on all of that. Giannis is a unique player. I think it can work. I've racked my head on how to make this work with Bam, right? I think it's very important that Bam is able to retain his identity. But at the same time, basketball is a concert, a jazz concert, right? And maybe more than other sports, guys really need to understand each other and complement each other. And if they don't quite complement each other, you know, from a natural standpoint, let's just, for lack of a better way of putting it, they should find a way to complement each other, right? I think that's where coaches and coaching comes in, and I'm sure Spo is going to figure some things out. I've looked at some comps in terms of other teams with two bigs, including us. I mean, we ran with Bam and Kalawari last year, so it's not like we're not used to it. Although they're both very different players, to be honest. But I look back at like Duncan and Robinson. Trying to think what are too big, but I didn't see much that I liked there. Where what I did see that I ended up liking in terms of Heat comp was 2006 Heat, because I am of the opinion that Giannis is closer to Shaq than he is to Kevin Durant or Joker or something like that. He's a post player. He wants to be a post player. He's just way, way, way more mobile than Shaq ever was. However, as I will show you in some film, I think we can run some similar stuff to what we did in that 2006 run. I don't have any clips of him and Dame. I will do an entire video on that. I think after looking at a lot of Giannis film, his short time with Dame sticks out to me that it just looked different than any other time that he played basketball, because he just, to have a guard be able to take away, to kind of alleviate his gravity a little bit, to kind of create like gravity on the perimeter to open up his post game. I mean, the little that they played together, it looked pretty lethal. And I'm pretty sure they were scoring at like the most elite pace in the league when they were both healthy, as in like they were the top scoring duo in the NBA. Now, Dame is one of one. He really doesn't play like anybody else. It's funny, I saw him in an interview recently say he really replicated his name after Mahmoud Abdul Rauf in terms of like the quick release, which I thought was very interesting. And it's funny, we all watched players growing up and we all kind of mix what we see on television, and then we practice those moves in the park and at home and all those kind of things. We want to emulate those guys, and that's how the players of today are formed, right? So Jordan exists for then Kobe to exist kind of like Jordan did, right? Now LeBron has done his thing, and whoever's going to come along to be similar to LeBron, maybe, we shall see where that goes. Okay, back to Giannis, the Greek freak. Okay, so different coaches discovered pieces of Giannis, and how Miami can assemble the best version of. How different coaches discovered pieces of Giannis, and how Miami can assemble the best version. North, south, right? I think it's kind of obvious, really, surface level, even fan level, casual fan level, to say that you want him to run the floor, to do fast break, to do secondary break. However, I think there are some specifics in terms of drag screens that you can do, in terms of like whether or not he brings up the ball, things you can do off of a make, which are interesting with him, because he is literally, I really think you can run the offense to Giannis on every play as long as he's healthy, and able to perform. I don't know what it's going to look like when he's on the bench. I guess that's going to be a separate chapter altogether. But I want to emphasize something important, and it's that, in my opinion, from what I've seen with film, you want to run the offense to Giannis and not through Giannis, right? To Giannis, not through Giannis, right? You want the actions to lead to him, but you don't necessarily want him making all of the uh, playmaking decisions, right? You don't want him necessarily creating all the time. And it's tricky because he is a decent ball handler for how tall he is. And you don't want to like take away who they are as people, right? He wants to run and dribble and do his little right to left crossover and dunk on people. Great. I think the trick will be convincing him when he should ball handle versus when he should let other guards do it and then screen for them, rim run, use his athleticism and insane length and his insane ability to finish at the rim, and let other people, bring the ball up the floor. Kind of like he did with Hollins last year, like he did with Dame, like he did with Drew Holiday. Way back when he did it with Michael Carter Williams, MCW in the early years. Okay, so north south, that's what you want. You want him to catch the ball on the move, right? You want him to catch the ball in a position of advantage, right? I don't think if you put Giannis in the corner, he's at an advantage, 3-point line corner. I don't think if you ask him to bring up the ball every single time and run the offense, I don't think he wants to make these like very intricate type of point guard passes. He doesn't want to do alley oops or cross court passes or complicated bounce passes. He basically wants to get to a dribble handoff, screen, and roll to the rim. And I guess what I'm saying with all of this, this portion of my rant, is that the Giannis offense doesn't have to be very complicated. And I think that's a sneaky thing in terms of like, oh, okay, so it's going to be easy. No, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's not, complex to figure out what he's good at. It's a different thing to execute it. I think the team should be on the same page in terms of like, this is a locomotive that you got to feed the coal. You got to, I don't know if that analogy means anything to listen to this video, but the coal running the engine kind of thing. And so what I mean by that is that, everybody should be looking for him on first fast breaks, on secondary breaks, where he is, and he hopefully can have that synergy with Davion, with Wiggins, with Bam, and Hardaway or whoever else plays. And so what I mean by that is that on the fast break, they're able to decide, right, if they should let Giannis bring the ball up because this is a moment where he can just, use his monster fast break ability, secondary break ability, early steal, early post ability, or when he should let someone else bring the ball and just run to the rim and again do those early post ups. And so in order of, and I'll bring up a whole screenshot out of it of like what he's best at, from what I've seen, it's fast break at the top. I would put these early post ups in the secondary break as like the next tier. So if that's S tier, that would be A tier. And then I would put the dribble handoffs, number 3 or B tier, whatever you want to call that, or also A tier. And then fourth, I'll put other stuff. I have to think about it more. Maybe like deep post is fourth. Shooting is probably way down on his tier list as far as like his least useful ability. Although I will say I think his shot looks pretty nice for a big guy. And in some of the videos I've seen over the summer, the shot looks good. The elbow's in, the release looks good, the rhythm looks good, the confidence looks good. So he can make shots, especially much, much better looking shot than it was early in his career. However, that being said, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary to do it. I don't think you need to force him into being a jump shooter. Now, what happened with Bam last year, I think is all of a sudden going to matter a lot. Right? Because Giannis is not going to be the corner 3 guy. But if Bam can be the corner 3 guy, we might be looking at something. And going back to those 2006 Heat, if Bam wants to hit that jumper from the nail, from the foul line area, I saw, and I think I have a clip here that I can show you, an example of Udonis Haslem, who's less offensively talented than Bam is, where he found a rhythm with Shaquille. And I think we can find something similar. It should be an interesting comp. I think in some ways, Bam can take the role that Ware had last year in hitting threes as a center. And in other ways, I think he can take on that 4 Udonis Haslam nail jumper role. I'm not sure about Bam hitting the baseline jumper. I think that's actually more of a Giannis thing. But there's definitely, after looking at a lot of film, I'm more, I guess, encouraged that the fit thing is gonna work, right? That we have been running stuff that Giannis will be comfortable running too, right? And that we can do it with Bam and Giannis at the same time. Okay, so north south advantage before the cap, but keep him to simple reads, right? I say the dribble handoff, and I'll say it a million times. It's a simple pass to make. He even when he the types of passes he makes are kind of just underhanded handoffs. He doesn't want to do alley oops. He doesn't want to do the cross to the other guy way over there. The tag defender got loose and you hit the guy in the corner for the 3. I think he doesn't want to turn the ball over, and credit to him for being an efficient player in that regard. But and the other thing is that if he takes 4, 5, 6, 7 dribbles, you see that his stats drop. If you want to look up something, look up Giannis after 7 dribbles in terms of like the success of the possession versus not. You want to make quick decisions with him, which is great. We were a fast-paced offense last year. I don't know about doing the no screen thing this year. I don't know. We'll see. If Spo thinks it's going to work, I believe in whatever he thinks. I've never seen Giannis playing an offense with no screens, so that should be interesting. So I think there's no way around doing some screening, and towards the end of last year, we were doing some screening. Okay. But yes, the pace can work. Some of the half-court stuff we were doing last year can work. And I think the lineup can work too. I'm not sure who's going to play the shooting guard as I speak to you today. If it's going to be Hardaway Jr. from a 3-point spread the floor standpoint, great. It's going to be kind of like Rollins last year. Maybe it's going to be Pella, which is my personal vote because of his ability to drive, and he's got a sneaky ability to shoot. And I just like Pella Larson, and he's a really good defender. So I don't know. So if it's Davion and Hardaway, or Davion and Pella Larson, don't know. And then Wiggins, and then Bam Adebayo as a power forward. And I think Giannis is going to have to play the center, or we're going to have to call them 2 power forwards, whatever you want to call them, or call them 2 centers, right? All right, so moving on. So just because he's capable doesn't mean you should have him do it, right? Because he can bring up the ball, because he can run an offense, because he can shoot it, doesn't necessarily mean you want him to do those things in terms of like the tier list we talked about of what he's best at, right? You want to get to what he's best at first, and if that doesn't work, you go down the list, right? So his capability is not the same as the understanding of what his role is, right? I like the idea of having him touch the ball when he already has an advantage, right? Versus asking him to be out on the perimeter and try to dribble around people or make complicated, Luka level point guard decisions, right? I think you can see his usage. One of the things I noticed when I was looking at the Bud film versus the other coaches was I was having trouble finding Giannis. I was like, where is he? What's going on? Oh, it's because that 2021 team, first of all, they were a really good team and deep and all of that thing, but they emphasized what I'm saying. They ran the offense to him, not through him, right? He was a part of a bigger machine in that. And so I'm wondering out loud here, actually, as I say it, if that's the best role for him, because that's how he won a championship, right? It was being a screener, being a rim runner, is being a post-up player, basically. Now, I don't think he's lost so much of his athleticism, or really much of it at all, that he can't still be that kind of player. And I think he's wiser. He's more choosy about when he wants to attack, and he's more careful about the angles he chooses. I think he's much better about not getting offensive fouls called on him and stuff like that. But anyway, suffice to say, he can retain his identity as a downhill player, and you don't have to ask him to do things that are not his forte, right? Move forward here. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. Kid had this concept, and it was in the media, that he was going to unlock point guard Giannis. I'm like, I don't know. I saw a lot of possessions where Giannis kind of pounds the ball a lot, looks at the first action, looks at the second action, maybe even a third action, and just finally makes a decision to go force someone into a dribble handoff with 3 or 4 or 5 seconds left on the clock. This is a trend with Giannis. When he's feeling like the clock is running down, the shot clock is running down, and he's not going to take a bad jumper, he will find someone and dribble hand it off to you. He will hand you the hand grenade, and then you have to make a short shot clock shot. So something to keep in mind when he's the ball handler. So Bud started doing something, kind of like sometimes, right? This is what I was saying about the tricky. Sometimes he should bring the ball up the floor because he's a monster in the break, fast and secondary, even off of makes, right? And then sometimes he should be point Giannis, and sometimes he should be Shaq Giannis. I think Griffin came in and wanted to do similar to what Bud did, in terms of what he said in his press conferences versus what Kidd was doing. Right now, all this being said, I think it was important that he went through the Jason Kidd years because we have today a good ball handling 6'11" guy, right? So it's definitely helped to arrive at this place now where he can be selective about when to be the ball handler and the creator, right? So when Doc took over, this 2024 Pacers series, I want to do a whole deep dive on. I thought it was fascinating. That Pacers team was really on an amazing run, and Carlisle and Halliburton have such, synergy, and they're on the same page and all that, and that whole team. But I saw Doc watching the Bucks in that series kind of lean into that Jason Kidd type of ball. And then when I saw later clips of like Dame and Giannis, or even clips of last year when Giannis was hurt a lot of the year, but towards February, March that he was able to play, he started moving towards the Bud style of Giannis, right? Where it's like you do the fast breaks, you do the early post-ups, and you do the dribble handoffs, and you don't put the burden of creating on him. You don't put him in a position where he's going to take 15 seconds off the shot clock because he's dribbling at the top of the key and he's technically a center, right? And so where does this lead to Spo? I'm not entirely sure. I have this gravity ball term up there. It's just kind of a general term for Giannis because he provides so much gravity. But I don't know. I think we're going to have to do a fast break team. And then I think when we get into the half court set, I personally would be curious because he does like to pass out to 3-point shooters too. And he doesn't mind passing with his back to the basket. So he can kind of play like a deep post point guardish center role there to kick out for threes. I really like the idea of doing re-entry passes with him like we used to do with Shaquille, where you pass it in, he doesn't like it, he passes it out to the perimeter. When he passes it out to the perimeter guy, he resets and reposts and gets like another inch of position on the defender, right? And then he's so lethal under the basket, you get that entry pass right back into him. So I would like to see Giannis posting up. I would like to see our guys doing entry passes. When he posts up, I would like our guys to be aware of running to him to bail him out with a dribble handoff when it looks like he's getting in trouble over ball handling and stuff like that, and he doesn't want to take a bad jump shot. All right. So, the bottom line is it's about system, right? It's about concepts more than it is about, some kind of set play, some kind of, thing that you name after Giannis, like the Iverson cut or something like that. I think that's not really the case here. I think you can keep it simple and execute it well, and it'll work. So that's what I was talking about with Kidd. Gave him freedom to bring up the ball, built that skill set, which is great because we have it today. I did see he would do inverted screens where he would have guards screen for Giannis. You're hoping for a switch there, right? And a mismatch. But even so, we're seeing more of the inverted screens in the league. Anyway, it used to be that you would never do that. But I think the league is kind of changing with that, and guard skills are kind of allowing it. to happen. So yeah, Kid was able to allow him to still be an explosive player. And in my opinion, at times it was a little too much usage on him, a little too much ball handling, creating that was asked of him under Kid until 2018. So then Bud comes around, and this is what I'm talking about: creating that advantage before the catch. Right? It's like, the actions that lead him to catching it, rolling to the rim, or going north south. Those drag screens with him are huge part of the offense. Right? Bam setting a drag screen at half court when people are not paying that close of attention, or maybe around the foul line area. It's gonna be huge, and it's gonna happen over and over and over again. Giannis transition as a handler, half court more often as a screener, roller, cutter, post target, early steals. Yep, all of this post up in transitions. Talked about those drag screens. Talk about those dribble handoffs into the rolls to the rim, because he doesn't really pop off the dribble handoffs. That's something to keep in mind, is that he's not a pop out threat, pick and pop threat. And I will be interested if we do screen Bam and Giannis. I'm so curious as to how teams are going to decide to defend that. And I'm also so curious as to what's going to come out of that for us. Is Bam able to pop? Is Giannis able to pop and hit an occasional three? I think the defense NBA will test him. They will go under. I think you're going to people are just going to put drop coverage, and they're going to go under, and they're going to challenge the Heat to shoot this year. And we'll see where it goes. All right, so then this kind of coaching carousel begins in Giannis's life, and we move from Griffin to Doc, and then Doc has to basically start over in his own way and decide how he's going to use Giannis, what offense he's going to use with him, what actions are best for him. He's got to learn, and he's got to weigh that against what he knows how to coach, right? I think most great coaches that I've seen, they develop a system around what the players, what their tendencies are, what their desires are, what they're good at, versus trying to make the player mold to your system as a coach. So I think that's why Doc started at the beginning. It was like, look, I'm gonna try doing this kind of like Jason Kidd was doing it. And as he progressed, it looked like it changed to more of similar of like Bud Budenholzer ball from 2021. So that progression happened, and it became, the fast break, secondary break, early post ups, dribble handoffs, screens at the foul line area, keeping him on the left or right side of the floor, in that mid post area where he can do his dribble handoffs and all that kind of thing, right? So then, where does this lead us? Okay, we don't have to copy the exact things that worked for the 2021 championship run, right? I think there's things you can pick from all of the coaches that have coached Giannis, and we can put them all together and then use our system, our offense, our culture, and mold it around these players, right? As Giannis, as the engine of it all, if you will, keeping him involved in actions, keeping him moving north south, make coverage choices expensive for teams. He cannot be guarded by one guy in the mid post. And if teams are going to start loading up and allowing that gravity to take over and triple teaming him and clogging the lane, we definitely have seen that before. Whether it was with Shaq or whether it was with LeBron, teams packed the paint against us. When LeBron first got to the Heat, teams did that a lot. So we'll probably go back to some of those counters that happened then. Okay. Meaningful screens. Giannis be the center of the offense without being the one running the offense. And then Bam as the connector. Very interested to see how this is going to work with Bam. But I think Bam might be a slightly better passer, although I'm not entirely sure about that. But they definitely want to be in different parts of the floor, which I think is encouraging, right? Bam likes the short jumper, whereas Giannis really wants to just get all the way to the rim, right? So I think the spacing can actually work there, and we can allow Bam to continue to do what he's been doing the last couple of years, and this whole evolution with him hitting threes is going to matter. I really think he can do some of the plays that we ran with Ware hitting threes. That could be Bam now, hitting corner threes, Okay, so the tier list, okay? this is what I have decided as a fan, and my observations are what he's best at and what, he's not best at. Okay, so we know the transition, secondary break stuff, drag screen is basically unstoppable. Has nothing to do, no drop off in athleticism is affecting that in 2026. You can do this stuff all the time. Okay, he has a very powerful. I can't believe I haven't mentioned his spin move up until now. He has a very strong spin move. He can do it in the post and he can do it off the dribble, right to left. He likes the right shoulder, I think, a little bit more, but he'll go either way. And he is a load down low. And when he's got the momentum going, I don't even think there's a lot of players that are willing to get in his way, much less that can stop him from doing it. Okay. The elbow catch, one dribble. Yes. I mean, he's really good at that kind of stuff. Screening. And then he can get from the 3-point line to the basket in basically 2 dribbles, right? High post. I want to see more of that. I want to see us kind of use him like we did with Shaq, and then try to avoid him, as the bailout late shot clock guy. I'm actually not even sure who that's going to be on the team. I think Bam was a little bit of that last year, so we shall see. And the funny thing is, I'm saying all of this, and there are plenty of highlights out there of Bam rescuing the team, where he decides with 5 seconds left that he's going to pull off some crazy move and get to the rim or get fouled. Great. If that happens, great. I don't think you want to lean into it, but great. So Bam. Bam, 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 bam. We ask him to post. We ask him to face up. We ask him to rescue, like I just said. Now it's like, what can you do for Giannis, my man? The short roll, it should be interesting. He likes it. I wonder if it'll be there. We keep talking about these foul line jumpers. I definitely don't think we don't want 3 guys standing around watching these 2. So we're going to have to figure out how to do this, right? Giannis creates the mismatch, and then Bam is like the one that initiates the advantage, right? The connector, if you will, right? Get Giannis the ball, get him to catch the ball where he already has an advantage, right? These are some of the stuff that I think would work with him, and hopefully I can do some film on it without YouTube blocking me, which is why we don't have any film in this video. So bear with me. I hope you guys like this kind of content, because this is much easier to make without spending a lot of time doing something that I eventually just can't even upload, sadly. So drag screens, my initial looking at offenses, I didn't like trying to fit Giannis into like a triangle offense, Tex Winter, Phil Jackson type of thing. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would. It doesn't seem like I've seen Giannis comfortable in doing anything similar to that. I think I mentioned earlier that I looked at the Duncan Robinson years. The Spurs offense, I initially went in there thinking, let me look at the 2014 Spurs and think, what an awesome team and how that could be us. But again, I just don't think it fits his tendencies and our roster. The 2006 Shaq thing, definitely I'm curious about, and I will dig more into. And just, not crazy, UCLA cuts, Chicago dribble handoffs, horn sets, all of this stuff will be used, right? And depending on what teams do to try to counter that, we can counter the counter, right? So we'll probably do a lot of screen the screener plays, right? Pick the picker plays. I know Eric Glass, EG, loves that stuff, right? The Heat love that stuff, right? So we'll screen the guy icing our screen if we have to, right? So, Spo is very clever. And I think we will find a way to hopefully maintain that identity of keeping the ball rolling downhill, punishing mismatches, and keeping that pace, right? We want that high pace with Giannis. Okay, so to kind of conclude this introduction, this contextual introduction to the book of Giannis, if you will, the Giannis dossier, as it were, you don't exile him, right? I don't think you want him standing in the corner, right? I think you want to involve him in almost everything you do, whether it's screening or ball handling or posting up, involve him, right? I don't think you want to make him, solve complicated, Luka level point guard decisions with, complicated defenses being thrown at him. And I think you can avoid that stuff, right? So you can avoid having him like drift into the perimeter. You know, if you're going to screen for him, there's a right time to screen far from the basket. I think you can do a screen at half court. You can do a screen at 3/4 court, in the back court even. You can do a drag screen, above the three. You can do another screen at the foul line. But you're going to have to watch it with, teams will start putting 3-4 guys in the paint. So if you do that screen, at the top of the 3-point line, they might have time to do that, right? The defense might have time to react to that kind of thing. So it'll have to be a little more, precise, and I think the team can make those decisions as they play, right, on the fly. So to conclude, okay, the goal is not more touches. The goal is better responsibilities, right? You don't have to do crazy usage with Giannis. What we need to understand are the pillars of the system, right? Of when to get him the ball, where to get him the ball, how to get him the ball, who should get him the ball, whether he's the one that should be getting other people the ball, whether he should be screening, whether he should be posting up and creating mismatches and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of this offense will happen on the court. It's not going to be like a lot of, set pieces, as they say in soccer. And we will keep him going north-south. We will get him those early touches in the possession. We will get him mismatches and advantages, and we'll make that low man make very difficult decisions because of our roster. And I think it should be very interesting. So next video, I'll start getting into the video proof, the video kind of evidence I have for everything that I've said thus far. Hope you enjoyed this style of video. I can make a lot more of these because YouTube lets me. Thanks for coming. Like, subscribe, comment. I'm very curious if anybody has anything to add to this conversation. I'm very excited for Giannis. So let's go Heat, and chapter 2 to come.